Welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending the session. And I firmly believe, much to the chagrin of my grandparents, that dessert ought to be had before dinner. And if I look to the right of my screen, it's not because I'm ignoring anyone, that's where all the faces are. So instinctively, I just look there. But if you're attending this talk, you likely want to know how you can assess students using Gradescope, but in a secure manner, especially in the world that we live in currently. So here's dessert. Here's how I actually do it, and then we can talk about how the magic happens behind the scenes. So here's a couple of videos. Oops, I think I need to enable audio first. Let's try this one more time. All right, guys, 2 hours for this test, hour and 45 minutes for working on the test itself, and then 15 minutes at the end for uploading your solutions. Before we get started, make sure your phone's in Do Not Disturb mode. Once you've confirmed that, please show me your screen. All right, Julie, thanks. You're good to go. Now that everyone's ready, if you refresh your page, you should see the test. Give me a thumbs up if you see it. All right, excellent. All right, you're welcome to get started 2 hours from now. I'm going to mute myself and everyone else. All right, guys, time is up. Please. Oops. Go back. All right, guys, time is up. Please put your pencils down and submit the test on Gradescope on your computer. The password to get out of Safe Exam Browser is OUT, O-U-T. Please make sure you join Zoom from your computer before you grab your phone and start taking photos. All right, so that's a very quick walkthrough of how, in my opinion, I'm able to administer tests, assessments, quizzes, whatever flavor you like to use, securely while also saving time by grading on Gradescope. And this was entirely possible due to this strange marriage or coupling between Gradescope, this wonderful open source software called Safe Exam Browser, and web conferencing software named Zoom. My name is Anurag Katyal. I have the privilege of teaching math at a wonderful institution in South Florida called Palm Beach State College, and I'll be your tour guide for the next 15-20 minutes. So I guess a bit of feedback on how I, or rather we, got here. So about this time last year, we got this email from our president, and I have taken some very, very, very severe editorial liberties here. But the email said something along the lines of, hey, there's a pandemic going on. We're going to go to remote instruction. So what you guys need to do is everything that you did in class, but now do it on Zoom. And we were, I guess I shouldn't complain about this, but we were the lucky ones that had a week to figure out best practices and how best to teach students via Zoom. I had never taught anything other than a face-to-face course, so it was a completely new transform for me. Left in that discussion, in that inner monologue, was, well, how do I test students? So the email ended with something that was slightly more disconcerting, something about there not being any toilet paper left. But other than that, there was another problem that needed to be solved. The problem was, because we changed over mid-semester, I still had to assess student learning and understanding. I still was responsible for giving them a grade. And I didn't think it would be fair to just give them the grade that I had for them in March. So this needed to be resolved in some sort of meaningful manner. The popular choice at the time amongst my colleagues at my department was to use publisher question banks with automated invigilation or proctoring. So I shied away from this option simply because the publisher question banks didn't allow me to write my own questions or use the questions that I had written previously. The questions were not terribly higher order thinking. They tended to stay towards the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy on that pyramid. And with the automated proctoring, at least the platform or the software that we use left a lot to be desired. Things were getting flagged that were not instances of academic dishonesty, but on the other hand, the software was not flagging things that were overt instances of academic dishonesty, of students cheating. And this compounded the problem because I have been using Gradescope for the past 3 years and I can't imagine any coursework without it. As Seth said in the previous, I've Gradescopeized all my courses to where I've written a whole bunch of my own questions. I wanted to use richer tasks where students could initiate or instantiate their thinking as opposed to just, here's a procedural problem, solve it. I do have those as well, but there are many, many questions that I simply can't find on publisher question banks that say something along the lines of, take any equation that you solved in this test or in this quiz and explain to me in plain English as if I were a smart, fourth grader how you did that. And that requires students to talk about and think about why they're doing the things they're doing as opposed to just memorizing a sequence of steps. So I had been spoiled by Gradescope's ability to deliver those types of questions, and I wasn't sure how to make that happen again once we went to remote. Unfortunate circumstances led to students either losing their jobs or losing hours at work because of the kinds of jobs that they were doing due to shutdowns. I've tried to make it as inexpensive as possible for students to take my courses. So I don't use anything that's not an open source text, and even the homework platform that I use is open source. So outside of tuition, students don't pay anything to take my courses. Now, I couldn't bear the thought of having them pay $50 per test to get, some proctoring services to take tests with. So I wanted to think about, well, what do the students already have in their homes that I could use to try to solve this problem of being able to give tests, but I wanted to use Gradescope and use my own questions. I didn't want to water down or dilute the course content or course assessment, and I didn't want to use the automated invigilation, which I had dealt with problems. So the solution was morbidly obvious, and I kind of smacked myself in the head. And it came out as TikTok. And if you were able to guess that, I promise I will send you $1 by PayPal. You just need to reach out to me. If you genuinely guessed that the solution was TikTok, I owe you $1. But this is apparently a platform, a social media thingamajiggy that kids use these days, or people use these days, to make videos of them dancing and laughing and doing all sorts of things that they think are funny. As a result of using that platform, a lot of my students, a surprising number of my students already had these tripods or gooseneck contraptions that they could mount their phone on. So I thought, well, how do I leverage this? And then came the solution. Online assignments I had not used up until that time, but they kind of got added to my account under beta privileges just at the right time. So Gradescope came in very, very, very big with the ability to write LaTeX natively within their questions and in the rubric and the comments. So I didn't feel any sort of pain going from writing exams in LaTeX on my desktop to just taking those questions, modifying the code ever so slightly, and sticking those same rich questions in Gradescope. The other piece of the puzzle was, how do I get students to make sure, or how do I make sure that students don't go to other websites other than Gradescope when they're taking the test? And Safe Exam Browser was the solution here. It's an open source lockdown browser. I'm sure all of you are familiar with some version of a lockdown browser, but it's an open source piece of software that was created by a consortium of research institutions and universities in the European Union and other parts of the world. It runs locally on a student's computer or on anyone's computer, so there's no FERPA violations to worry about. There's no data being sent from the student's computer to a central server somewhere. All it does is it just locks down any website link that you give to Safe Exam Browser. Another big plus in the column of Safe Exam Browser over the competitor that our college has a license to was that it worked out of the box with iPads. And initially, when we found out, we had to move exams over to the platform that the college uses, if that was the supporting document that we wanted, we found out that iPads were not supported with that particular software. So students who only had an iPad at home and were coming to campus to use a laptop or a desktop were unfortunately left out in the dirt. So Safe Exam Browser kind of worked out wonderfully in that students were able to use a laptop, a PC, like a Windows machine, a Mac machine, or even an iPad in order to take exams securely. And then video conferencing software, I've tried this with Zoom, Google Meet, Jitsi Meet. There's a whole bunch of them, and with all of them, with minor tweaks, you can do the same exact thing. And obviously, there's absolutely no reason why I'm the only person qualified to give this talk. I've had the absolute pleasure of working with the best colleagues, and I have to call 3 of them out by name for humoring me and taking tests as students and spending Friday evenings trying to find out a secure way of having students take tests. Dr. Özlem Urlu, who's a math colleague of mine, Dr. Sungji Schmidt, she's an anatomy and physiology professor, and Dr. Marcella Wanderley, she's a chemistry professor. So again, the solution is not something I came up with. It came out of a brainstorming session, multiple brainstorming sessions of a lot of people. So now the meat and potatoes. I share these instructions prior to each assessment with my students, either by Slack, which is my course communication platform. I enjoy it. I enjoy the informality of it. I enjoy the immediacy of it. Students have it at their fingertips at all times. And you could also send the same instructions by an email. There's nothing inherently special about Slack here. But with the instructions come, hey, make sure you use the restroom if you need to, clear your work surface, make sure your phone is in do not disturb mode. I'll talk about the benefits of that later. And I include the Zoom link and the meeting ID and password so that students have multiple ways of getting on in case they need it. Towards the bottom of the page, you can see the arrows pointing to the calcmidterm.seb file. That's essentially the Safe Exam Browser file that they need to download. And then if you look right underneath the word into in the middle of the screen, there's an orange encapsulated word light. That's the password to get into Safe Exam Browser. So students aren't able to get in Safe Exam Browser without that password. They're not able to get out of Safe Exam Browser without me giving them a password as well. But I don't share that until the end of the test. So here's a walkthrough of what a student would do prior to even joining Zoom on their phone. They would download the file, double click on it. They would enter the password light, or whatever the password is for that particular quiz, to get into Safe Exam Browser. At this stage, they just log into Gradescope like they normally would. Now, there's this red jarring message across the top, and this is actually a good thing. Students have learned to know that if they see this message, that's because they're in the right spot, but I have not opened up the assignment yet. So they've learned to not be offended by it, but actually learn to enjoy it. At that stage, they continue on by clicking into their course. And finally, the arrows are pointing at 2 icons on the bottom left and bottom right corner of the screen. So when I say to my students, please show me your screen at the start of the test, those are the 2 icons I'm really looking for, or the stream of icons and the order in which they are. That's for me to confirm that all the students that are about to start the test, or quiz for that matter, are in the right spot and they're doing things the right way. They're not using Safari or Chrome or something else. And this is how the phone setup is. I found this inexpensive gooseneck looking thing that clamps to the side of the desk. This is how my model of choice, my significant other, was able to plop her phone towards the top of the gooseneck. So here's a quick video explaining how it's attached. And then there's a clamp that opens up quite wide and houses the phone itself. This is flexible tubing, so you can raise the gooseneck, you can lower it. But the idea was that I wanted to have a view of the workspace that students were using, writing on their computer, so I could see out of the corner of the screen that they were in Safe Exam Browser the entire time. And obviously the student in the void space on the right. This clamp assembly can be attached to a sturdy chair. You can move the chair back and forward. So there's a lot more flexibility in terms of how the students can create this safe, secure testing environment. And here we are again. So try to keep in mind how the gooseneck, the phone, Safe Exam Browser, and all the stuff works together. All right, guys, 2 hours for this test, hour and 45 minutes for working on the test itself, and then 15 minutes at the end for uploading your solutions. Before we get started, make sure your phone's in Do Not Disturb mode. Once you've confirmed that, please show me your screen. All right, so all my students have been told that when I say show me your screen, that's exactly what I need to look at. Really, thanks, you're good to go. The student at that stage puts the phone back in the gooseneck or tripod, whatever they have. Now that everyone's ready, if you refresh your page, you should see the test. Now this speaks to a Christmas wish list that I have towards the end of the talk, but as of right now, I can't have the assignment open as students, the assignments are not password protected. So instead of having to just give them a password to get into the assignment, I have to keep the assignment closed until such time that everyone's verified to be within Safe Exam Browser. But it's a very quick change. I just make the assignment available after changing the due date or the due time. Give me a thumbs up if you see it. All right, excellent. All right, you're welcome to get started 2 hours from now. And just as an example, with one student, it's quite easy, but with multiple students, it's no more difficult. You can have all the students and the red arrows are pointing at what they're showing me. And the green students, or the ones that are greened out, were having issues, but everyone kind of gets sorted out eventually. At the first quiz, it might be a little wonky, but usually after that, I haven't had any issues since. And again, this is after the test is over. So I'll point out a few All right, guys, time is up. Please put your pencils down and submit the test on Gradescope on your computer. The password to get out of Safe Exam Browser is out. I only share this password once the test is over, that once the time has run out, or everyone finishes, whichever comes sooner. UT. Please make sure you join Zoom from your computer before you grab your phone and start taking photos. That's to account for something that I had to deal with this past summer. I wanted to make sure that the students were in view of some sort of a camera so they weren't uploading photos of material that they had not come up with. So I wanted to make sure that students were uploading solutions that they had themselves written. So this little handoff allows the students to essentially switch over to their laptop or a desktop or iPad, whatever the case might be. Then they leave Zoom from their phones and start taking photos and uploading their solutions to Gradescope for free response questions. Now, unfortunately, the dessert was not terribly kind. A couple of weeks ago, we had a report that was released by our institution that college-wide, the success rates for intermediate and college algebra were going up by 15%. And a lot of times people were quite, at least in the math department, were saddened by the pat on the backs that we were getting. All the other gateway disciplines that got analyzed for the past year's worth of data went down or remained the same on average. But for our two courses that are gateway courses, on average, things shot up by 15%, which was alarming. On the flip side, I've never had to deal with as many cases of academic dishonesty. So something was obviously up there, but I'm happy to say that the system kind of sort of worked. I was able to catch students doing some really, really silly things. Just to give two quick examples. One student swapped out her laptop that was running Safe Exam Browser for another one. And for some reason, she thought that I was joking when I said that I will be here watching students take the test the entire time. On another occasion, a student turned in photos with lined yellow letter pad paper onto Gradescope, but their solutions on camera when they were taking the test were all written on plain white printer paper. So they were, someone else was taking the test. They were just taking photos of someone else's work and uploading it. So then the question becomes, well, why go through all this? I wanted to continue my love affair with Gradescope. It's allowed me to continue to use wonderful questions that test how much students know and learn and think, as opposed to just using the stuff that's already available. It saved me a whole bunch of time and allowed me to continue giving richer feedback to students. So again, everything that I was able to do previously, I was able to continue to do with Gradescope. One unintended benefit to this was if we were to use the phone with Zoom, there was an inherent backup that was built in. So even if a student lost power, lost Wi-Fi, the phone would just automatically switch over to their cell phone provider as a backup. So even if that happened, as long as they were in front of me as they would be in a classroom, I just added an extra 10 minutes to their assignment time on the back end. Do Not Disturb was just there to prevent notifications from blacking out the Zoom screen. And it helped me sleep better at night, knowing that the students that I was giving passing grades to had genuinely learned the material. I wasn't passing on problems to other instructors. And lastly, a nod to fellow Whovians, perhaps, because I'm a technophile. I enjoy learning how to do things in a slightly different manner than perhaps what is the common way of doing things. And of course, this wonderful marriage between Gradescope and SEB, like bow ties, is cool. Just a couple of things on my wish list that I hope I get prior to Christmas, maybe on the summer, would be the ability to password protect online assignments and then change the passwords after the assignments open. The third one is crossed out because they were able to make that happen before I even started preparing for this talk. So kudos to Gradescope for being very, very, very responsive to faculty member requests. And all of these slides are available at my website, pitimespy.com/talks. You're welcome to grab them off of there if you find them useful. And if there are any questions I can answer, I'm happy to collaborate with anyone or offer insight on things that have worked with me or for me at my email there.